Good evening and thank you so much. My name is Gibson Nyikadzino, and today for the program I'm joined by the Ambassador of France to Zimbabwe, His Excellency, Mr. Barets. Thank you so much, Excellence, for joining us.
Mongwaneni mararasai.
No tender. So, first of all, you've been in Zimbabwe, I think, for close to 6 months now.
Almost 4 months.
Almost 4 months. That's
I arrived mid-September.
That's nice. But tell us your general view regards the Zimbabwe-France relations and also France-Africa relations.
Well, our approach to Africa is evolving a lot, has been evolving a lot those last years. We are more and more willing to turn our relationship towards the future. Not saying that the past is not important, you know. And by the way, France is doing its best to study the common past that we have with some African countries. For example, with Rwanda, with Cameroon, there is an historian commission ongoing, studying with what we did in Cameroon. And so we don't want to forget the past, but more and more we want to turn towards the future. And in this regard, our approach is being modernized. We evolved from an approach that was mostly based on development aid, also on security issues, towards an approach that is more a partnership approach, based on mutual interests. I would just, if you allow me, give 2 quick examples drawn from my own experience as a diplomat. Recently, in December, I brought to Zimbabwe Digital Africa. That is a French initiative designed to support the startups and to enable them to develop. So this is an approach, you see, that is not a donation approach. France has an interest to support startups in Africa that are that we think, that we esteem to be potentially successful. So this is an approach based on mutual interest. We put money in Zimbabwean startups that we believe in. Another example, drawn also from my experience, is the discussions we want to have more and more with African countries on global issues such as biodiversity, climate change. And before I came to Zimbabwe, I organized for the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, a summit in Gabon, Libreville, called One Forest Summit, that was about conservation of forests in Africa for the good of biodiversity and also for climate change. And we associated a lot of representatives of the civil society, a lot of companies, private companies, and private actors. So this is a new approach that we have. And this is not limited to the French-speaking countries. We are developing new partnerships with Nigeria, for example, with Kenya, with Ethiopia, with Zambia, very close to here. New partnership turned towards the future and not limited to the French-speaking sphere.
And that's where exactly I wanted some further explanation and clarity. The new approach to Africa. There's a narrative that this approach is being triggered by some of the events that are happening in the Sahelan countries. For instance, when you look at the military coups in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, that there's a breakdown of relations between these countries and the French government, triggered by French exploitation of Africa's natural resources. So I wanted to find out, why do you think this is so? Is there any other explanation that you can give to?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking, but France has no such interest in these 3 specific countries, Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso. who is exploiting gold in Mali? Who? Not France. Who is exploiting the natural resources of these countries? Not France. The trade with these countries, this is 0.1% of our external trade. Can you believe? So, as I know, Gibson, you are a good journalist. I would invite you to look closer at who, for example, is benefiting from the gold traffic organized by the Mali regime, Mali military regime. It's the Russian Wagner.
So it has nothing to do with the French government?
Nothing to do.
Okay. But basically, how much of France's economic dependence rests on African trade?
Well, France has limited trade with the sub-Saharan African countries as a whole. Those are 48 countries. These are 1.9% of the external trade, which is too limited. So I would not say that France has an economic dependence on Africa. We have an economic relationship that we want to very much to develop, and that is the very reason why I am here in Zimbabwe. Already at the first conversation I had with President Emerson Mnangagwa, we agreed, the both of us, that we should do more in terms of economic relationship. We should develop more the trade and the investments on both parties. Therefore, I brought almost 20 French companies already in October in Harare to explore new avenues for cooperation. Therefore, I brought Digital Africa to support the startups. And this will be very much at the heart of my agenda for 2025. I will do my best to bring again French companies, maybe new ones, especially at the occasion of the European Economic Forum that we will organize with our European friends by the end of May. And where we will try again to explore new avenues for cooperation. And on the other way around, I would like very much to have more Zimbabwean investors investing in France and discovering the French market. So we will try to work on this with my dear counterpart, Ambassador Sekai Nzenza, the former commerce Minister for Commerce in Zimbabwe, who is now representing your country in Paris.
So do you have any projections of investments that French companies would want to do in Zimbabwe, and likely statistics maybe?
It's difficult to give statistics. The volume of trade is not very high, something like 60, 70 millions of euros per year. So really there is room for improvement. But there are very concrete projects being discussed. We have people working in the field of the renewable energies, for example, solar power, hydrogen. We have people working in the field of infrastructures, exploring the different options, whether in the dam sector or in the tramway sector. So we have people in the consulting sector also. So there are many spheres of cooperation that are possible.
Then on January 6th, I understand President Macron had a meeting in which there are some remarks that he said which have been translated differently or interpreted differently, where he said with maybe Sahelian countries, which you said France has no primary interest in, he said we had a security relationship and it was twofold. One was our commitment against terrorism since 2013. He went on to say an expression that there is ingratitude, there's a form of ingratitude that has happened. I think how do you look at these comments? Are they not trying to alienate Africa?
Well, the president made these comments at the conference of the ambassadors.
Yeah.
I was there. I can assure you that there was no racism at all in these words. There was emotion, yes. Because what are we talking about? We are talking about three countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, where France, at the request of these three countries, deployed troops on the ground to fight against terrorism. And do you have any idea of how many French soldiers lost their lives on this ground? 58. So meaning that 58 families are still suffering from their death. And we invested a lot in terms of development as well and military support. So I insist that France deployed its troops there at the request of these countries, in the full respect of their sovereignty. It started in 2013, when the Mali government called for our support in the context of a terrorist insurrection in the north of the country, and once again in full respect of the sovereignty of the country. And it developed in a full-fledged operation covering these three countries. Also, let's not forget that our relationship with these three countries is not limited to the defense dimension. We are doing a lot with at least both of them still nowadays, Burkina Faso and Mali, in the fields of development, cooperation on the ground, and we want really to turn towards the future with these countries and to see how we could, as I said, really find avenues of cooperation on an equal footing and on the base of mutual interests.
So what it means is your government, the Burkinabe government and the Malian government, there is still cooperation that is going on.
Absolutely. We have still embassies there. We have still relationships, diplomatic relationships, and we are now turning towards the future and exploring avenues for to rebuild our relationships on a new base, in the respect of their sovereignty and of their decisions.
Then maybe lastly, you talked about a new development approach or new approach to Africa. I wanted to find out, how do we locate Africa in this relationship, considering the global changes that are going on? If we look at Eastern Europe, if we look in the Middle East, even when you look at Africa itself, a lot of countries want to have relations with Africa just by looking at the way summits are organized, Euro-Africa Summit, etc. How do you see Africa in this new approach?
I see it as very crucial, very central. Africa, according to the demographs, will host 2.5 billion of people by 2050. Africa represents a quarter of the state members of the United Nations. Therefore, by the way, France has been asking for decades for Africa to be better represented at the UN Security Council, because it's totally abnormal that Africa be not properly represented when Africa is representing 54 countries and a quarter of the United Nations membership. So this has to change. We will continue to fight for a reform of the United Nations Security Council, and one of the reasons why I wanted to come to Africa and to Southern Africa was exactly this one. I am personally convinced that Africa will be key in the solution of the global challenges that the planet is facing in the 21st century. Be it climate change, be it biodiversity, be it security. Therefore, the problems that we have currently in Europe, the tensions, the war in Ukraine, also the tensions in the Middle East, should not remove our attention, distract our attention from what is at stake in Africa.
So what it means is Africa is going to be playing a key role for all future global decisions.
I think so. I think so, and I think that in this regard, the relationship between France and Africa, Europe and Africa, can be strategic for the 21st century, as we are the closest continent to Africa. We have a common history. And we have, France, for example, is the second investor in Africa. Second investor. We have France is hosting is a destination where you have the biggest figure of African students. African students, mostly they go to France to study. So we have a special relationship. And on this we can build a strong future, I think. And of course, this future is full of risks, of threats. The demographic trend can be an asset, can be also a challenge. But I am an optimist. And so I think that together, France and Africa, France and Zimbabwe, France and Southern Africa, we can really make it a success.
Thank you so much for your time, Excellency.
Thank you, Gibson.
Thank you.